Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Seattle, King County are announcing the next steps we are taking to stabilize, right-size, and reset the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. These are significant changes to how we deliver our regional response to homelessness, and Mayor Wilson and I want to explain why we're taking these steps. Several years ago, leaders from King County, the city of Seattle, and around the region launched KCRHA to advance an important idea. Homelessness is a regional crisis that requires a regional solution. It does not stop or start at the borders of any one city. That idea still holds true today. We need a regional response to homelessness, but that response must be accountable, financially sound, and capable of delivering the results that people experiencing homelessness, service providers, taxpayers, and our entire community deserve. KCRHA was created to strengthen regional coordination, reduce fragmentation, and help us respond to the growing scale of homelessness more effectively. It's no secret that over the past 6 years, this organization has experienced significant leadership turnover, multiple audits, and most recently, an independent forensic evaluation that identified serious concerns related to financial management, governance, and internal controls. In response to that forensic evaluation, Mayor Wilson and I directed KCRHA to develop a corrective action plan to fix the issues that were uncovered. When the corrective action plan came back to us, it showed that progress was being made in some key areas, but it was also insufficient and made clear that more action was needed. It didn't provide the clarity, timelines, or urgency needed to fully address the findings of the forensic evaluation. We have two new administrations in Seattle and King County. Mayor Wilson and I have inherited a lot of issues, but we will not maintain the status quo just because change is hard. So today we are taking further action to stabilize, right-size, and reset KCRHA. Our aim is to strengthen this organization's foundation, improve accountability, and put the agency in the strongest possible position to fulfill the responsibilities that are entrusted to it. First, we have been taking action to stabilize KCRHA. Strong organizations require strong financial systems. Beginning this week, King County and the City of Seattle will embed an independent financial compliance team within KCRHA to strengthen financial oversight, improve internal controls, support timely payments to providers, and help ensure the agency remains well-positioned to secure critical federal funds. This team will provide regular progress updates to KCRHA's Finance Committee, as well as to my office and the Mayor's office. Second, we are right-sizing KCRHA's focus. That means narrowing its scope of work to focus exclusively on its core regional responsibilities, including holding and distributing the federal Continuum of Care funds. We will also align responsibilities across our homelessness response system with the organizations best positioned to carry them out. That's why today, King County and the City of Seattle are announcing that the administration of city and county-funded homelessness service contracts will transition back to King County and the City of Seattle through a phased implementation beginning in January of 2027. Throughout that transition, our teams at DCHS and HSD will work closely with providers to maintain continuity of services, minimize disruption, and ensure people experiencing homelessness continue to receive the support that they depend on. The city and county will also work with KCRHA and its partners to ensure we have a strong continuum of care strategy and effectively respond to federal funding requirements. I have confidence in DCHS and the team that will lead this transition at the county. They bring deep expertise administering complex housing and homelessness programs, and I know they are committed to partnering closely with providers to ensure this transition is thoughtful, deliberate, and focused on the people that we serve. Third, in addition to resetting KCRHA's operation, we need to reset reset our regional approach to homelessness. Today's actions are about strengthening KCRHA to achieve its core responsibilities, but they also create an opportunity to have a broader conversation about the future, about what our regional homelessness response should look like in the years ahead. That conversation can't happen at City Hall or King County's Chinook building alone. It must include our 39 cities, our state and federal partners, service providers, labor, philanthropy, businesses, people with lived experience, and communities across the region. Mayor Wilson and I will do the broad stakeholdering that is needed to shape that next chapter. And together, we'll shape a system that is stronger, more accountable, and better equipped to meet the needs of our region for years to come. We know these are significant changes, but I want to take a moment to be clear about what these announcements are not saying. It does not mean King County or the City of Seattle are walking away from regional collaboration. We remain firmly committed to a regional homelessness response system. What is changing is how responsibilities will be organized so that every part of our homelessness response is being carried out by the organizations that are best equipped to do that work. I also want to be clear that today's announcement should not be seen as a reflection on the dedication, the talent, or the integrity of the people who work at KCRHA. Every day they take on incredibly difficult work in service of our most vulnerable neighbors. And thousands of people across our region have been housed because of their efforts. We are deeply, deeply grateful for their service. Above all, our responsibility is to ensure this transition strengthens our regional response without disrupting the services that people depend on. But strengthening KCRHA is only one part of the work ahead. At the same time, we're advancing broader efforts to prevent homelessness, expand housing, and strengthen coordination. In March, as you may recall, I launched my Breaking the Cycle executive order, which advances work to break the cycles of those interconnected issues of homelessness, substance use disorder, and repeated involvement in the criminal justice system, with housing at the center of that effort. Because we know that addressing homelessness requires more than responding after people lose their homes. It requires strengthening the systems that help people remain housed. It requires expanding affordable housing, addressing behavioral health needs, and creating better long-term outcomes. Our work group is already working hard and will deliver recommendations to me later this year that will help shape future regional homelessness strategies. We're also advancing our goal of opening 500 net new units of housing in 500 days, which includes 80 new tiny homes, which we will be building in Seattle's Central District. This week, I also convened the first meeting of our new revenue work group to explore what could become the first countywide housing levy in King County's history. If this is successful, it could create a generational investment in emergency housing, supportive housing, affordable housing, and the long-term solutions that our region needs to break the cycle of homelessness. Also, on my 100th day as King County Executive, I issued a Better Government Executive Order. We are raising the bar with the goal of becoming the best-run local government in the nation. Public excellence requires making difficult decisions when the facts require it, managing public resources responsibly, and building public trust through accountability and results. We also recognize that implementing these changes will take time, thoughtful planning, and close work with our partners. I want to recognize many of those partners who are here today, standing alongside me, including State Representative Nicole Macri, who's here, SEIU 1199 Northwest President Jane Hopkins, and Plymouth Housing CEO Karen Lee. All of them will be speaking today. I also want to recognize our partners who aren't speaking today, but also here, my colleagues from the King County Council. I see Councilmember Barone and Councilmember Rhonda Lewis. KCRHA governing board members are also here. We have KCRHA CEO, Dr. Kelly Kinnison, who is somewhere in the back as well. Hello, Dr. Kinnison. We have King County Department and Executive Office leadership, a number of you who have been working on the Breaking the Cycle work group. Thank you also for being here, and just everyone who has helped inform the work that brings us here today. I also want to take a moment to thank Plymouth Housing and the CEO, Karen Lee, for hosting us here at Blake House today. Just to contextualize a little bit for all of you, Blake House opened in 2023 and is part of the first affordable high-rise to open in Seattle in over 50 years. It has over 100 units for seniors and veterans who have experienced chronic homelessness and provides the critical wraparound services they need to recover and thrive. Finally, thank you to our media partners for joining us today and helping to get out this really important information. And most importantly, I want to thank Mayor Wilson and the City of Seattle and her whole team for collaborating on this incredibly complex work. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Mayor Wilson. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you to the executive who has laid out, I think, very thoroughly what we are doing and why. So I'm going to ad-lib a little here and try not to just entirely repeat everything that he said. So as the executive mentioned, the King County Regional Homelessness Authority was formed for some really good and important reasons. Homelessness is a regional crisis. It doesn't stop at the borders of any one city. And in order to be successful, we know that we need to take a regional approach that is based in collaboration and on a really realistic understanding of this crisis, its causes, and how we help people out of homelessness. And the agency has faced really deep challenges since its founding. And I think when I reflect on the reasons for that, and also I know that many people in this room have been through multiple iterations of imagining our homelessness response in this region. When I reflect on the reasons for those challenges, one that sticks out to me is that this agency was given incredible responsibility without sufficient capacity or authority to really effectively create and drive an overall strategy for addressing the homelessness crisis in our region. And I think that the audit really reflects this reality and also, of course, brings to light specific problems that have to be urgently addressed. So the actions that we are announcing today are aimed at strengthening the King County Regional Homelessness Authority as the foundation for an effective regional response. So we are stabilizing. Right? We are embedding outside consultants who can shore up the agency's ability to manage its finances, shore up its ability to do compliance. This is really, really important as we focus the agency on its core regional functions. The King County Regional Homelessness Authority is our designated applicant for Continuum of Care funds, and we recognize the deep importance that we are able to submit the strongest possible application for those federal resources. The agency will also continue to be the vehicle for coordinated entry and for our homelessness management information system. So these are properly regional functions, and our goal here is to really allow the KCRHA to focus on those regional functions effectively and responsibly and with accountability. And as the executive mentioned, we are reabsorbing our city and county contracts to the city and the county. And you know, this I feel is really, for me, a matter of taking political responsibility. It is a reflection of the fact that I and the executive, as new elected leaders, we are really the ones who have been given the authority by voters to drive a response to this crisis. And we need to welcome and accept that responsibility, and that is what we are doing with these actions today. In doing this, we recognize that what is so crucial is continuity and stability. For the service providers who are out there every day doing the hard work of serving our homeless population and helping people into shelter and stability and housing, and continuity for the people that we are serving, because ultimately this work is about people. And so we are trying to do this in a deliberate and measured way so that we do not have disruption that is harmful to the people that we are aiming to serve. And as we do this, we recognize the deep importance of alignment and coordination between the city and the county and all of our other partners. And our teams have been hard at work, honestly, throughout this year, meeting almost daily, to make sure that we are doing this work with that alignment and that coordination. And I'll just close by saying that although we are in this really challenging moment, for this agency and for our region and our homelessness crisis generally, right? We just got the results of the recent point in time count. We have seen another significant increase, especially in our rates of unsheltered homelessness, which we should all feel is unacceptable and feel a real urgency around addressing that fact. So we are in this challenging moment, and at the same time, I want to say that I am filled with a lot of hope. I'm filled with a lot of hope because we are in a moment again where we have new leadership that is really, I think, committed to tackling this crisis with the urgency that it deserves. And I think there is a huge amount of alignment in terms of the values and the vision between the executives Breaking the Cycle initiative and the shelter acceleration work that we have embarked on at the City of Seattle. We are in a moment where we can learn from the past, and we can also learn from other cities that have seen some success in greatly reducing their rates of homelessness, from Denver to Boston to San Francisco. I think we are open to drawing all the lessons that we can from other places. And we can learn from and we can expand on the successful models and the work that is already being done here. And we have a lot of that as well. And I just want to call out one example, and this was reported on, I believe, in the Seattle Times, among others. During the World Cup over the last few weeks, over the last couple of months, there has been a concerted effort to navigate people who have been sleeping unsheltered in Pioneer Square into shelter with services. This has been a collaboration between multiple service providers, including Purpose Dignity Action, DESC, the Downtown Seattle Association, working with Community Solutions. And they have successfully navigated over 70 people. And these are the people who are hardest to serve into shelter with services. And I'll say that the shelter that we recently opened up in Interbay, the first large shelter of our shelter acceleration efforts, has been key to providing that space to bring people inside to. So this is a demonstration of what works. We know what works, and we have an opportunity now to expand on what works and to really make progress on this issue, which has been so challenging for so long. So I'm here with a sense of hope, and I am so grateful to the partnership with King County, all of the people and organizations who are represented here today, and we will move forward and we will do this work together. Thank you. And I think I'm turning it over to Representative Nicole Macri.
Thanks, Mayor. And thank you all for being here. It's quite fitting, I think, that we're here today at Blake House, which is such a great example of what regional, state, and federal partnership can really deliver for people who need stable housing and wraparound services. So thank you, Karen, for hosting us today here and the entire team at Plymouth. I am Representative Nicole Macri, and I want to thank the executive, the mayor, and all of the partners, including our service providers, our labor and community partners, whose work really together has brought us to this moment. The public rightly expects urgency, accountability, and results from those of us who are entrusted with responding to homelessness. They expect us to use taxpayer dollars wisely, be transparent, and to make changes when systems are not working the way we intend them. That's why today's announcement from the mayor and the exec are so important. The idea behind regional response to homelessness, I agree, remains the right one. Homelessness doesn't stop at city boundaries, and neither should our solutions. The desire to bring jurisdictions together to address a shared challenge is a good and worthwhile goal. But regional coordination must be matched by a real sense of urgency, strong financial stewardship, clear lines of responsibility, and public confidence that our resources are being managed effectively. The plan that you heard today, I think, begins to deliver on those values. It takes seriously the findings of the forensic review. It advances the stronger accountability and clearer oversight that taxpayers deserve. It builds a more stable foundation for our regional homelessness response. And most importantly, it keeps our focus on the people who depend on these services. Throughout my career, both in my community work and in the legislature, I have worked towards a vision where in our communities, everyone has the opportunity to live in safe, stable housing and have their healthcare needs met. This includes older adults trying to age with dignity, families working to keep a roof over their heads, and food on the table for their children, veterans who've served our country, and people living with disabilities, including those living with complex behavioral health needs. For them, most especially, stability matters. As these changes move forward, people receiving services should not experience disruption in care. Providers should be able to focus on serving people rather than navigating uncertainty. And the workers who deliver outreach, shelter, supportive housing, and case management should have the support they need to continue to do this work. I want to especially recognize the people who keep our homelessness response system running. Every day, frontline workers across our housing, healthcare, human services, and public sectors, including at KCRHA, help to connect people to stability, maintain essential services, and ensure that public dollars are used effectively and transparently. And I want to recognize that no single entity can solve homelessness alone. Federal resources matter. State investments matter. Counties, cities, service providers, labor organizations, healthcare systems, philanthropy, businesses, and community members have an important role to play. And our greatest progress comes when we can partner effectively. This partnership is especially important right now as we work to protect federal funding. This plan reinforces the strong governance, accountability, and fiscal stewardship that taxpayers and our federal partners expect, while helping ensure that critical resources remain available to support people who are experiencing homelessness throughout our region. At the same time, accountability runs in both directions. Local communities have a responsibility to administer public resources effectively, and federal agencies have a responsibility to follow the law. This week's federal court ruling in favor of Attorney General Nick Brown's lawsuit against HUD was an important victory for communities in Washington and across the country. It affirmed that HUD must follow the law when administering these programs, and it protects our ability to continue delivering services to people who need them. The most recent point-in-time count reminds us that homelessness remains one of the most urgent challenges facing our region. That reality demands both accountability and partnership. It requires us to learn from what has worked, improve what has not, and bring together governments, providers, workers, businesses, philanthropy, and community members around a shared commitment to swift and sustainable progress. Every resident, worker, and visitor in our region benefit when more people are housed, when services are effective, and when public resources are managed responsibly, and when our neighborhoods are healthy, safe, and thriving. That's what today's announcement is intended to advance. There is much more work to do, and I look forward to continuing the work together. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Jane.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jane Hopkins, and I'm a registered nurse and the president of SEIU Healthcare 1199 Northwest, a union of more than 38,000 members, healthcare workers. It might not feel like it today with the World Cup out there, but this is the most important thing that's happening in our community today. Outside, people are excited. I am sorry. I will. Outside, our streets are alive. There's joy, there's hope, and there's celebration. It reminds us what it's like when we are all of one mind and we all come together. I love that. My dad was a soccer player. You guys say soccer. In England and in Sierra Leone. And so I'm really excited about the excitement that's out here today. But when that's all gone, what are they going to remember? What are we going to be talking about? Today, we're here to make a pivot that doesn't need to be done, but it's going to be done because we have to do that, so that everyone has a home to return to at the end of the day. Our union of healthcare workers includes those at the front line of homelessness, like DESC and Harborview and emergency departments all across the county. We are guided by the clear fact that every single one of us and the entire healthcare system are better when people are housed. It is the right thing to do. It is the effective thing to do. Whether we're asking to take care of other people, whether we're thinking about pocketbooks, our hospitals, our businesses, or ourselves. But it's not an easy thing to do. That's why I'm really excited to be here, because this was not an easy decision to make. We have not succeeded, and so we have to keep asking if we are on the right track, make changes when we learn that we must do better. Our members support this effort that strengthens accountability, protects services, and keeps the focus on housing people. That is why we're encouraged by the steps that's been announced today. This new path gives us opportunity to sharpen our regional homelessness authority focus. It recognizes that regional coordination remains essential. It asks KCRHA to focus on the functions that really, truly that strengthens accountability for resources entrusted to all of us. For those people we serve, success means continuity. It means counselors, case managers can focus on helping people instead of navigating uncertainty. It means someone sleeping outside today continues to receive services tomorrow, next month, and next year. As this transition moves forward, we must support the workers like Jarrell Campbell, who's in the room today, who makes this system function every day. Frontline caregivers, outreach workers, case managers, housing specialists, support staff are people solving the problem every day. Maintaining a stable workforce and uninterrupted services must remain the center of this effort. Joy, hope, connection, and celebration of healthy bodies, determined minds, and working together. That same spirit doesn't have to leave our streets today as the World Cup ends. It is the spirit that our members bring to the work every day. And if this region and our partners stand with them, we can bring everybody home. Our community deserves both compassion and accountability. This plan is about making sure every dollar is spent responsibly, every provider can focus on delivering services, and every person experiencing homelessness has a clearer path home. Thank you.
Good afternoon, elected officials, friends, and members of the press. My name is Karen Lee, and I am one of your service providers, and I'm also the CEO of Plymouth Housing. I'm especially grateful to be here today. We are at Blake House, which was named after Blake Nordstrom. This building exists for people who have been told no too many times. Most of our residents have been homeless for over a year, have complex medical and support needs, and all of our residents are human beings, deserving of dignity, stability, and hope. So many of these residents I've seen over the years and since it opened, and I've talked to a few, and I'm going to highlight one today, but before I do that, I just want to say there's a resident that lives here on the 3rd floor that slept for 7 years right here across the street, and his room overlooks his former sleeping area. And he talked about why he chose that area. He talked about it was on a corner, it was safer here, and that he could see danger coming. And today he has a guitar collection and he's working and improving himself. Another resident here had a home that he rented with several others, and then the building was raised and he no longer could afford a place to live, and he was homeless for over a year. Our site director here, Baruch, told me another story about a resident here named Tina. And when Tina moved into this building, she had lost nearly all of her vision to cataracts. She struggled to get food. She couldn't read her mail, couldn't read her cell phone, and she couldn't keep track of critical identification information. And she became increasingly isolated. But our staff didn't give up on her. They brought her meals. They helped her replace her documents. They walked alongside her to her appointments until she was finally able to receive the care that restored her vision. And this didn't happen because of one agency or one program. It happened because people show up day after day and because there's a stable system that allows our staff to do their work. As this transition moves forward, let's remember who this is really about. Somewhere in the county today, another person is facing the same barriers that Tina once did. And to our gentleman on the third floor, there's a fence around where he used to sleep. And I've had people come and beg on this door here and beg to move in to Blake House. And it's quite sad. Regardless of which entity manages contracts, our neighbors must remain at the center of our focus and every decision that we make. We can't allow this transition to come at the expense of people because people sleeping outside cannot wait. I'm very encouraged by today's commitment to a regional response because homelessness does not stop at city boundaries, and our response cannot either. People deserve access to housing and services wherever they are. And across King County, the need is greater than the resources that are currently available. And as a provider operating in 3 cities, soon to be 4, we understand that our regional approach is exactly what we need. At Plymouth, we are ready to do our work, and we love our work. No one can face this crisis alone, and it's why we'll continue working every day with our partners, with you, the city, King County, KCRHA, and anyone else who wants to volunteer. Providers are ready to lead and deliver. Now we ask our public partners to work alongside us so that we can achieve the results that this community deserves. In the end, people won't judge this transition by an organizational chart, but they'll judge it by what truly matters. Did more people move inside? Did more people find stable housing? And did they stay housed? Because that's what matters, whether we keep our promise and keep our promise to those who today don't have a place to stay. Thank you, and I'll turn it back over to you, Executive.
Thank you so much, Karen, for just keeping our eye on what really matters. Thank you to all of our speakers, especially those of you who were able to humanize the people who are suffering from this crisis that we're all trying to solve. We know that the announcements that we made today are not easy. They're not going to happen overnight. They're going to require really thoughtful implementation and strong collaboration, but that's something that every single one of us in this room and beyond are committed to because there are a lot of people counting on us. And with that, we'll take some questions and Callie will call on people.
Yeah, we're going to take questions. Please raise your hand. We'll start with Michelle in the back.
Thanks very much. Michelle Small with Como News. I was curious how much federal funding is at stake here, 1, and then 2, what are the contracts worth that we're talking about transferring from the city and the county?
Yeah, I believe the continuum of care funds that the KCRHA receives are about $67 million, and those go on to house about 4,500 people. And then what was the second part of that question?
The city and county contracts that will be transferred, what are they worth?
I don't have that number. Anybody have that number? About $160 million. It's over 200 contracts.
Alejandra, then Erica.
Yeah, so several council members have actually called for the dissolution of KCRHA. Councilmember Dunn just put out a statement that he said this is a failed experiment. Mayor, executive, why do you not support these legislations to dissolve KCRHA at this point?
You want to start off?
Yeah, thank you for the question. homelessness is a regional problem, and I think as we've laid out, there are some really core functions that are really properly regional. The King County Regional Homelessness Authority is the designated applicant for continuum of care funds. We have the Homelessness Management Information System. We have the coordinated entry system. And so we think it is really important that we are focusing this agency on those core functions.
Erica?
Question for either the mayor or executive, both. In what way, I mean, this seems like a return to the pre-KCRHA status quo for the most part, with I think some other changes, coming. So I guess the question is, would you characterize it that way, and does this mean that the agency has failed?
I would not characterize it that way. As the mayor mentioned, there are some core regional services that will remain with KCRHA, and so those are continuing to stay regionalized. And then with respect to the contracts that are coming back to the city and the county, in the short term, it is true that a provider will have to respond to two different entities versus one entity, but I am confident that Director Kim at HSD and Director McLaughlin at DCHS are going to work together to harmonize the terms of those contracts to make the responsibility of responding to those contracts as streamlined and simple as possible. And like we mentioned before, in the long run, our goal is to create a more effective regional system, and that requires much more than the input of just me and the mayor. We want to make sure that we have the broad stakeholdering with providers, with cities, with federal and state partners and beyond to really build something that is resilient and has the buy-in of many more people.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that the assumption of city and county contracts by the KCRHA was not terribly successful. So that is not saying the agency was a failure, but I think that particular part of its function, talking to service providers, right, that was not a successful part of its work. And I think the other thing to point out is that, right now, the city and the county both have homelessness funds that they deploy separately and contract separately. So the status quo right now is not that there is only one entity that service providers are having to apply to. Already, many, many service providers are separately contracted with the KCRHA, the city, the county. And so as we're resetting those contracts back to the city and the county, our teams are exploring how we can make sure that we are doing that in a way that creates consistency and simplicity for service providers. And so we are not going to go back to the way it was before. We are going to make sure that we are combining our processes in some fashion to be determined to make this as clear and simple for the organizations that are applying for funding.
Guy, and then Brandon.
Hi. Do you think the changes over the past 6 years, focusing really on structure, how we manage bureaucracies, has kind of distracted from the real core solutions that are needed, and perhaps the real fundamental need to address homelessness requires just resources and scaling up the investments to levels that maybe are common in other countries, European countries, but really in the US we're not yet experienced since the Reagan era to really handle the issue.
So to the first part of your question about whether all of the focus on structure has distracted from how we really address the crisis, I think that is true, although structure is important. What I would say is that resources are one piece of this, but I think also we can do a lot better with the resources that we have. I think that this is really a matter of making sure that we are spending the resources that we have as effectively as possible, and that means that we need to be thinking about how, across the whole system, from how we are interacting with people who are unsheltered, to how we are doing our shelter and what kinds of services we are providing, through a range of different kinds of shelter, to the pathways into housing, through to public health and interactions with hard review, and there are many, many pieces to this system that need to be put together in the right way, and that has, I think, not been done. I mean, there are certain areas where collaborations have been really successful, but I think across the whole system, we are not aligning all of the players, all of the organizations in the most effective way, and that is the work that, regardless of what the kind of overall structure looks like, that is the work that we need to be doing, and the work that I think both I and the executive and our council members and everyone in this room is committed to.
Yeah, Guy, that's a really great question. DESC put out information this week that showed that the provider network that KCRHA is working with every year houses thousands of people. It's just that the people coming into homelessness are coming in at a much higher rate than people are able to exit. And so it's my opinion that even if KCRHA was batting at 100%, do I think that our homelessness crisis would have ended? The answer is no. I think the mayor's right. We need to be doing a lot better with the resources that we have, but also to meet this moment at the scale that it requires, absolutely requires much more resources, much more effective systems, and that's what some of the work that we described outside of the KCRHA system is designed to implement, with better government, with the Breaking the Cycle initiative, with a shelter acceleration plan, and also partnering with our state and federal partners who do have much more flexible tools for raising the revenue that's needed to truly put a roof over everybody's head and give everybody wraparound services that are needed to help everybody get onto a path of recovery.
Brandon?
Understanding the technical aspects of the continuum care, HMIS, as well as coordinated entry, what about the work itself of getting people indoors and off the streets is sufficient for you two to say KCRHA should stick around?
I think it should stick around to manage those regional functions that you described before. But in terms of the work of getting people off of the street with the basic homelessness contracts that exist, I believe that the city and the county's departments have the expertise needed to administer those contracts, and the provider network is still going to exist, right? Those providers are the ones out there on the street doing outreach, providing people resources, getting people into housing, and I think they will continue to do that effectively.
We can go to David and then back to Michelle. Or let's go to Connor since he has the last question first.
Yeah, Mayor Wilson, you talked about the political responsibility of homelessness. Why is the governing board of KCRHA not sufficient to bring that political responsibility onto the shoulders of elected officials?
I mean, I think we've just seen in practice that hasn't been the way that it's worked. And I don't necessarily want to get into like all the kind of exact structure of the agency that maybe has made that hard. But I just think that it is demonstrable looking at how the history of the last 5 years or whatever has gone, that has not been the way that agency was structured or has functioned. And so for me, I just, in this moment, I believe that this is the right move, so that the executive and I and our council members, our respective jurisdictions, working with other cities, jurisdictions around the county, we can really put our brains to work figuring out with all of our service providers what is that approach that is going to be successful in that moment. And that is the work that we are already have separately committed to doing, right? So the executive in his Breaking the Cycle initiative, we in our shelter acceleration work, right? This is work that has already started. And so in this moment, the correct home for that work is in our administrations in collaboration with everyone else, as opposed to at the governing board.
Connor, and then we'll go back to Michelle and Erica.
So we're all like this whole press conference about the KCRHA, but they're not taking questions right now. And the last time I checked, they're in the back of the room. Why was the decision not to have them up here, make a speech, answer questions? Because it seems like we're all talking about them, but they're not here to answer questions.
They are here and available to take questions after the press conference is over.
Well, that was the choice not to have them up there.
I think just being able to talk about the future of narrowing its scope and making sure that as we plan for a future that is broader than the organization, that's kind of what we wanted to talk about up here.
I'll go back to Michelle and Erica.
Thank you. So fair to say significant shift, not eliminating KCRHA, but shrinking it significantly. So with that in mind, is there any sort of job loss, any other consequences as a result of this?
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, sure. Just because we're not eliminating KCHR,
Yeah.
that's not what you're proposing,
Yeah.
but you're shrinking it significantly. That said, is there any job loss or consequences as a result?
I think there will be. If we're narrowing the scope to just focusing on those core regional functions, we do anticipate that there will be transitions of positions at that organization.
And is there a cost on the transfer to send those contracts from the agency to the city and the county? Do we know what that would be?
Anybody who wants to speak to that?
I mean, yeah, if someone wants to come up, I mean, I think the city and the county, we're both working on and this is partly why this announcement is coming at this time, is because we are working on our plans to staff up in order to be able to handle those contracts, and we may or may not have, facts and figures at this point about costs. But the hope is that, and the assumption is that once that happens, our overall system will be able to work more effectively and efficiently.
To give you specific numbers, at King County, we're looking to hire between 10 to 12 people to work at DCHS to help manage and administer those contracts.
Erica?
The changes, the stuff that's staying at KCRHA right now is basically all for short-term reasons, the continuum of care, federal contracts, point-in-time count, they've got to finish that. What do you anticipate will happen after all that's done? I mean, is it likely that ultimately this agency is going to get shut down and those functions are going to move back? I think severe weather shelter is also at KCRHA still.
Erica, I think the short answer is we don't know yet. That's what the broad stakeholdering is designed to do, is to give us a path forward in the coming years that is co-designed by all the necessary people and not just the mayor and myself.
Do you have, Mayor, do you have any thoughts on, what you would like to see as an ideal outcome?
I want to see an effective homelessness response system that dramatically reduces unsheltered homelessness on our streets.
We go back to Brandon.
Councilmembers Dombrowski and Rivera in the city and county who have sponsored the dissolution legislation have celebrated this, saying this is a first step towards unwinding the agency. Is unwinding it inevitable right now?
No.
The answer is no. And I would also note that this is a press conference, but it's not a celebration. We're not taking a celebratory attitude toward this. I actually think this is a sober moment of taking responsibility and taking necessary next steps. But in terms of is the entity being dissolved, the answer at this time is no.
And not just that it's not being dissolved, it is being strengthened, right? So we are trying to position it so that it can perform those core functions, and crucially, being a strong applicant for continuum of care funds. That is the intention of these actions, to actually strengthen, stabilize the agency so that it can perform those functions really, really well.
Guy, let me go back to you, Connor.
For the 60 to 70 or so KCRHA employees that will presumably be laid off, is there any plan to have them a good transition, either giving them preferential hiring into HSD or King County DCHS, and will they also be given severance? Is there any specifics at this time?
I don't think we have specifics at this time, but we're in conversation about that. And again, part of the reason why we are figuring this out now is that we have some time to figure that out.
Back to Connor.
It seems like the transition from city and county taking over is going to happen early in 2027. If the city council and county council vote to dissolve the organization before then, would the KCRHA be ready to, would all the entities be ready to do that dissolving, or would there be additional time past January?
Can you ask that one more time, Connor?
Currently, you guys are taking over the contracts in January 2027. If the county and city councils vote to dissolve KCRHA earlier, would the city and county be ready to take over those responsibilities sooner?
I don't believe there's any chance that the city council will vote to dissolve the KCRHA.
I don't believe that's going to happen either. In the short answer, though, is that we believe we will be ready to take those contracts in January, and I don't believe any of our colleagues would jeopardize our ability to manage those contracts prematurely.
All right, we have time for one more question. Erica, I saw your hand first.
So I have a question about the continuum of care funding. It seems, setting aside KCRHA's issues, it seems highly unlikely that the city is competitive and the county are competitive right now, given all the changes in the contract rules. So how optimistic are either of you that we're going to get, some significant portion of that $67 million?
We are committed to submitting the strongest possible application. And, I think it's no secret that Seattle, King County, we have a target on our backs because of our values. So we are obviously also preparing for a situation where we lose some or all of that funding, and I think we are jointly very committed to making sure that the people who are currently served by continuum of care funds through permanent supportive housing, through rapid rehousing, through other kinds of shelter, that they do not become homeless. So we are absolutely committed to that outcome. And we are going to do our darndest to get that federal money because we need it.
Yeah, I echo everything the mayor said. I think the truth is that none of us in this room know what the federal government is going to do. It's kind of like reading tea leaves, but we are taking all of the actions that we believe put us in the strongest position. When we look at what happened in Los Angeles, the way the mayor and I interpret that is that inaction by local authorities and perceptions of mismanagement and fraud were the driving reasons why that agency was defunded by the federal government. And we want to make sure that those perceptions are minimized here, that we are showing that we are strengthening this agency to focus on its core responsibility of managing well those federal resources and taking all other actions to put us in the strongest possible position to receive those funds.